Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a second part to Preston, the gentleman that we spoke to yesterday from Ohio. He is a truck driver that was delivering fuel when he had his encounter out in Ohio. His encounter had been published in the North American Dogman project back in 2018. Tonight he is going to share an encounter that he has heard from his very good friend in his area of Cincinnati, Ohio. Before we get into that upload, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel continue to grow and go. All those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that really don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. Now, I've taken enough of your time, guys. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Alright guys, as promised yesterday, I have Preston back. He is going to share an encounter or encounters that one of his friends had. Also, he wanted to clarify some things that were in the comment section. Last night was a great upload. I'm very happy with it, and I'm honored to have Preston back. Preston, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, Jeff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good, and it's a pleasure to have you back.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back, and like I said, you said off air, and I want to say it. I said it off the record. I want to say it on the record. Man, like I really, 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 really appreciate you reaching out to me. I'm listening to the playback last night of my encounter, and getting a little choked up now, but I actually start crying because I'm at the point where I'm listening to it, where I'm explaining myself, talking like how I had to still go to this place twice a week. I kind of really forgot, how traumatizing this was for me, man. So I had to, say it again. And it was really healthy for me to get that out, because obviously I didn't know I had that anxiety in me still, And just hearing that, like it was somebody else saying it, it just like reminded me, I guess, things I suppressed for the sake of having to do my job. So, man, I just want to thank you, for giving me the outlet to be able to heal myself a little bit.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But yeah, I just want to, in listening to it, I took a couple notes on myself, but I just want to clarify a couple things and reply to a couple of the comments. First of all, there's a guy who made a comment, and I appreciate that, because, like I said, every day I'm alive, I try to learn something new. So, there was a commenter who let me know that baby geese are called goslings. So now if I ever tell the story about my mom and the baby geese, I will say goslings. The goslings were gone. I won't say baby geese. There was a comment. No, I'll wait on that. There was a comment that a person made that when I read it kind of gave me goosebumps, because it's something I never thought about before. But the person who made the comment about maybe get in touch with the former driver or my route or my job possibly knew. Okay. It's funny. When I read that, it just like, I got goosebumps, because it's a well-known fact, like among my customers and my coworkers, right? My job or my route was, they call it the revolving door. Like everyone, my supervisor, it was no secret. Like in the prior year to me taking that route, they went through at least 7 drivers. Like seriously, they couldn't keep anybody on that route. And, I got to wonder, if one, if not all of these drivers, because the job it wasn't that physically, strenuous, although I ended up getting injured. But I got to think that possibly one, if not all these drivers may have saw what I saw and just decided to just quit because either who would believe them or, afraid that the ownership might think they're on drugs or something. I mean, I'm not being funny. It sounds like it, but I never thought about that until it was brought up in the comment section. And I got to say, it's a viable possibility. It's a very possibility. Another comment that was, now this was like a common thread that people made that, which is true, and I'm a believer that is when it's not the one that you do see, but it's the one that you don't see. And the only reason I don't think that it was the setup move was because, like I explained, my actual sighting took place. I said April. That's another correction. It was actually like early March. But from the time I had my sighting till we actually ended that route because they weren't paying their bill, that's another story for another day, was actually late September. So I went there twice a week from March to like the end of September. And I'm here to tell you the story. And like I said, there's no doubt in my mind that I was being watched, if not all the times I was there. I always got the feeling like it was watching me. I just didn't know where it was now because I busted it on the roof, so it didn't pick the roof anymore. So I'm not saying, you guys are wrong, but I just don't think that because they had the entire summer to get me if they wanted to, and they had ample opportunity. Now, this person, I remember him, I'm going to call him out by name, this guy, Mike Turner, he made a comment, and he kind of, I won't say exposed me, but I'm kind of glad he figured out who I was because it kind of helps give me a little bit, validity a little bit, because I'm going to give you a timeline. He made a comment that he actually saw my story and heard my story written up on the North American Dogman project. And that's me. I'm the anonymous Central Ohio fuel truck driver. Now, if you look at when that was, Jody Cook uploaded that about a month or two after it happened, maybe April, May of 2018. Now, at the time, I was still currently employed. I was still going there twice a week. So they were, they were a customer, and this was involving my job. So I wanted to get it out there, but because I didn't want to jeopardize my job or my customers in any way, at the time I was still anonymous. Fast forward now, I'm no longer working. So my anonymity isn't that much of, me being anonymous isn't an issue for me anymore. Plus knowing who I am, or at least my name, helps, adds legitimacy. So, but that's basically it. Now, a couple little things I want to correct yesterday. I used the term footprint, and I shouldn't use that because it actually wasn't a footprint. It was actually the biggest canine print I've ever seen. It was 6 inches by 6 inches long by 5 inches wide or something like that. So, but I kept referring to it as a footprint. I've never seen a werewolf, so I can't speak on those, but I can speak on a canine-footed, upright walking canine. That's what I did.
Not to cut you off, but
okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna use that picture of that print next to that orange glove. That I'm gonna use that as today's thumbnail for this upload. Okay, so everybody will be able to see how big it truly is. Okay,
and there's something I'm glad you, because as I'm talking, people I guess will obviously be looking at this print. Now, there's one thing that I want people to keep in mind with this particular print. It was raining at the time, so there's about at least an inch of standing water in that print. So as you're looking at it, you almost get like a mirror reflection. So if you don't really see how deep this freaking print was imprinted into the ground, because it's half filled with water, but that gives you an idea of actually how deep, because it's like at least a half, like a good half inch of standing water in the print itself. So it's actually bigger and deeper than it actually looks if it didn't have the standing water on it. But so that's one correction. And two, when I explain to people how this thing has a tactical advantage, I really want to paint a clear picture. Okay, when I would be filling the tanks, I would the way these tanks are situated, they're next to each other, but they're inside these concrete enclosures. So basically, I would be standing on top of these concrete slabs, basically. So as I look straight ahead, there would be a tree line about 200 yards ahead, straight ahead of me. So to my, now if you can think about this like hands of a clock type thing, they had a big spoil pile. Now that's a construction term, spoil pile to the layman. It's a big mound of dirt. So this mound of dirt was about 30 feet high because it was like some type of aggregate that they had piled up. So when I would pull in, my vision would only be from, say, 12 o'clock to my left. Because of that dirt pile being so big, you had the dirt pile and then that building. So I couldn't even see the woods to my right, so I never would ever even look in that direction. So part of, that's what I'm saying, the forethought, that there's perfect advantage to see me and me not see it, but it knew I never looked over there. I never looked over there to begin with because I couldn't see the woods, and that's where I would be focused on, would be the woods. So for it to know that I never even looked over there to begin with, and for it to be in a perfect spot to see me and me not see it, unless I was extremely lucky. Like, I just want to re-emphasize to people, like, the intelligence that is to observe me first, to see my pattern, and then to know, like, okay, if I want to check dude out, this is where I have to be for him not to see me. Like, that's not, that's scary intelligence. So I just want to reiterate to people, like, if you want to see one of these things, please let it be by accident, or just let it be an accident, man. Don't go out looking for something that might be I'm stuttering because I am a stutterer, but I'm just trying to emphasize, man, you do not want to go out looking for these, Jeff. And I'm glad that's one thing that you kind of emphasize too, like, kind of let this stuff be an accident. You don't want to actively go out looking for these things. Okay? So that's pretty much a ball on that. Now I'm going to move on to my main topic, which is my hometown, Cincinnati. Cincinnati is known to the Native Americans as the land of seven hills. And doing my research in Cincinnati, there's actually, like, in the greater Cincinnati area, the history of Cincinnati, there were no indigenous tribes that took the greater Cincinnati as their home, which given like how I described Cincinnati, it would have been prime territory, for anybody to live in, but they didn't. And I think it's because they knew something. Cincinnati, has a couple of hot spots. And, I've come to find out information, and, this is something that I've been really wrestling back and forth, like, what, if I had the opportunity, would I even, let any of this stuff out? Because for the first time in my life, I've felt myself with the dilemma that people have when they have information that the public probably should know, but you weigh should you let it out because of the chaos or because of the chaos or whatever that it might bring. But this is important, and people need to know, and it may answer a lot of questions that people have been having. I'm gonna talk about one particular area because it's connected with my friend's encounter. Okay, Cincinnati, it's like one of the oldest, maybe like city parks in the country. It's called Mount Airy Forest. And it's very aptly named Mount Airy Forest because it's 1,500 acres of basically untouched wilderness that hasn't been cut or developed in over 100 years. Like right smack dab on the west side of Cincinnati. Okay. So knowing what I know now, I go back and I look at events and things that have taken place like over the past 20 years in Cincinnati, in and around Mount Airy. Now, Mount Airy Forest, like I said, it's a very, very big park, and it's bordered by several different communities. So, and people in Cincinnati will know, like, okay, yeah, now it's starting to make sense. There's been take past 20 years or so, there's been an increase in all the communities that border Mount Airy Forest of household pets going missing. Like pets just going missing. So they were initially blaming it on coyotes. But the thing about it is the coyote population, it's grown a little bit in Miami Forest, not to the extent that the reports of all these missing animals take place. Not to mention attacks of people that have been blamed on like rogue packs of dogs and coyotes throughout the past 20, 25 years, all in and around the Mount Airy Forest area. So Mount Airy Forest also has a very large deer population. They have water sources, and it's a densely wooded area for the most part. So, my friend, when I had initially started telling her like about the whole Dogman phenomenon, this was actually before I had my first encounter. So, we were talking, and she was just interested in, and once again, when you say certain things and you start jogging a person's memory, they'll start to maybe make connections. So she has 3 encounters, and I'm going to tell them not in order, but I'm going to tell them basically is what I consider like least significant to most significant. Now, the first one happened. This would have been, I guess, 2006. Her and her husband were driving. They were going from their home. At the time, they lived in an apartment complex, which I'll get to that later more in detail with her encounter. So the way this main road that they're on goes is it's a long uphill like drag. So they're driving up the hill, and off in a ditch to her side, they see something like walking in the ditch. So this thing is, as she described, it was huge. It was like she described it as big as a small gorilla. But she's like it was walking on all fours, and she's like it was walking, so they were coming up to her, so they see the backside of it. So her husband really didn't get a good view of it because he's driving. But she said as she's driving by, the one thing they both noticed, this thing had like shoulders. So, but she says as she's driving by, it turned and looked at her face, and that's when she could see like this thing had the face of a wolf or a dog, she said. So, she got, her and her husband ended up getting into a little argument because he's trying to tell her, like, which I don't blame him, because with most people, everything is Sasquatch. If it's anything, it's going to be Sasquatch, because that's all most people know. So she's like, look, you didn't see it. That thing with that face of a dog, that was the biggest dog I ever seen. So, blah, blah, blah. So fast forward now. Now, her next encounter is actually involving her sister. Now, this happened around Halloween of 2011 in that park I was telling you about, Mount Airy Forest. Every year in Mount Airy Forest, I don't know if they still do, but they used to have what was called the Haunted Woods. It was basically a haunted trail going through Mount Airy. So, as my friend is telling me the story, she gets a call one night from her younger sister. She's frantic, right? So she's literally screaming and yelling on the phone. She's hearing other people screaming, yelling in the background. So she's trying to calm her down to find out, okay, like what's going on. So through her franticness, her sister explains to her that it was her sister, her sister's boyfriend, and another couple. So there are two couples, and they're doing a little double date thing on this haunted trail. So according to them, according to them, a werewolf steps on the trail and lets out like a howl, and it scares them so bad that they run off of the trail into the woods. Lost in the woods. So that's the point in which her sister called my friend, right? So her sister is telling her, like, we just saw a werewolf. It growled at us. It chased us off the trail, and we're lost. So she's telling me now, and this is the point where it might be verified. While my friend's sister's on the phone with her, the other couple, the guy, is actually on the phone with 911. Like, so my friend can hear the other telephone conversation where the person talked to the 911 operator. So apparently, like, my friend says that at one point she hears it howl. She's like, I heard it actually howl over the phone, right? So my sister's like, did you hear it? Did you hear it? So my friend is, logically thinking this is all part of the haunted trail. So she's like, oh, girl, that's a loudspeaker. Like, she's like, no, it's not. You're not here. Like, I'm trying to tell you, like, what this is. Like this, we saw a werewolf. So she goes, so she's hearing this commotion, and she can periodically hear this thing howling in the background. So all these years, she never really doubted what her sister saw, but she seriously thought it was part of the haunted trail. And to this day, her sister always insisted that no, they actually saw like a wolfman, werewolf, whatever you want to call it, Dogman on this trail. So it wasn't until I brought up Dogman that she remembered that, and like, oh my goodness, like she wasn't lying. Like it like I thought it was a man in a suit, and she kept telling me like, no, this was no man in a suit. This was a real monster on the trail. So I got to talking to her, and I'm telling her like, about some of the other things that Dogmen do. Like, and one thing they do is, they've been known to like look in windows and stuff. So when I said that, she gets extremely quiet. She was like, oh my God. She was like, I've got something to tell you. She's like, this is deep. She's like, I'm shaking. She's like, okay. She's like, my son, she's okay. When my son was born in 2007, she goes, a week before my son was, okay, let me back up for a minute. Where she lived at, it was a apartment complex that it was off of a street called Westwood Northern Boulevard. People in Cincinnati don't know what it is. And she lived at near the bottom where Montana and that street connect. But there was an apartment complex on a street off of that boulevard. So she lived in the first building in the complex, and the way this complex was made, her building backed right up right up to the wood line, like literally. And she lived in a basement apartment. Okay, so in a basement apartment, her window, like their windows were ground level. Okay, so let me back up for a minute. This is where it gets deep. It was a diverse community where she lived at in an apartment complex. So her neighbors, there was a large African population in that apartment complex. So it was a kind of a well-known fact that a group of these guys, these African guys, would, without going into any detail, they would make excursions at night into Mount Airy Forest. Okay, so this was like a well-known fact. So one night, her and her husband, my friend and her husband at the time, her ex-husband, they're coming home. Now, I can't make this stuff up, Jeff. Her husband speaks French. He black dude from the hood. He speaks French. Don't ask me how, but he speaks French. So, among a lot of African countries, French is a common dialect.
Right.
So they come home one night, and a group of these African guys are standing outside, like kind of commotion, and they're talking because they normally aren't back that early from going in the woods. So he's listening to their conversation in French, so he joins, and they normally like him because he speaks French. So they include him in the conversation. So they tell him this story that, okay, they're in the woods and they're on the trail. So let's just call the guy who was in front Mohammed. This is probably a group of about 8 or 9 people. So as Mohammed is coming through the trail or walking along the trail in front, he sees a pair of glowing eyes behind the tree. So he starts, as they're walking, he starts pointing out, like, do you all see those eyes? So nobody sees it, so they're like, man, you're seeing things or whatever. So everybody's walking, but he's like, no, like, you don't see those eyes. Like, look right there by that tree. So nobody sees them. So they're continuing to walk. Now, the guy in the rear of the group, he turns out he didn't think he saw something, but he thinks he sees something behind him cross the trail from right to left. But he thought he saw something else. But the whole time, Mohammed, who's leading the group, is insistent, like, hey, you don't see those eyes right there, right? So the guy in the rear still isn't, he's feeling kind of iffy because he thought he saw something cross the trail. Now he's feeling like they're being trailed, or he doesn't feel easy at this point. So I guess simultaneously I guess the reason why the group didn't see what Mohammed was pointing to was because they weren't looking high enough, because I guess collectively the group at one point followed his finger, and I guess wherever these set of eyes were, they were higher than anybody thought they would have been. So I guess simultaneously, the guy who was in the back of the group, as he was going to look behind him again, to check, he's looking over he's swinging left, like he's looking over to his left side. So he says as he's panning over, I guess, he sees, now, I'm not saying this trying to be, because I'm black, so I'm not trying to be racist, but I'm just trying to give you perspective, like these are African guys. So, like I said yesterday with me, when you don't know what you're seeing, you try to put in perspective with what you see. So according to these guys, the guy who sees the Dogman, I guess 10 feet in front of him off the trail, or to the side of him off the trail, says, he screams and is like, look. What he's like, that's not a bear, that's not a dog, right? So as they're describing to her husband what they saw, he's like, oh, that's oh, you must have saw a Sasquatch, you know? And like, what's that? So he's trying to describe them what a Sasquatch is, and they're like, well, no, this thing had a wolf, a dog, a wolf. You know. So a couple days later, one of the guys comes over to their apartment. So, you know, my friend, she's listening to her husband talk to him, and he goes on the internet, pulls up some images of Sasquatch. And the guy says, he's like, no, that's not it. He's like, it was big like that, but it didn't look like that. It looked like that, but it had head of dog. You know, and he was insistent that this thing had head of a dog. Now, I'm setting it all up now. Now, all this is about two to 3 weeks prior to her encounter. Now, the night of her encounter, this is a week before she had her son. So she was extremely pregnant. So as she explains it, she's like, I was pregnant and miserable. So she was like, it was, you know, I was hot. So she was like, I went, you know, I took a shower, came out of the shower, and she was like, you know, I just air dried. I was naked. I just air dried. And she's like, I sat on my bed, turned on TV. She's like, you know, it's funny when you talk to people and details that they remember. When she told me the story, she's like, she sat down, she started watching Judge Mathis, and I just thought that was a interesting detail to bring up. So she has a window in her bedroom, like this, like straight across from her bathroom. Now, like I explained, they live in a basement apartment, so their windows were like ground level window, and it's dark outside. And she said, like, she just felt like something wasn't being watched or something wasn't right. So she said she looks over her shoulder, and she said she saw what she described as what looked like two lights, basically, like glowing in the window. So she looked, and what she thought it was okay. Now, if you picture a dark room at night, like, and a window there, and so you have like ambient light from television or something, or ambient light, you're gonna get kind of a reflection in the window. You know, it's gonna give you kind of like a half mirror kind of reflection or whatever. So she goes up to the window and she's looking at these lights, and then she's looking at the bathroom. She's trying to figure out like what sources of light in the bathroom is producing this reflection on the window, because she thought it was a reflection of light. So she's like, I walk up, you know, to the window. She's like, I'm about a foot away from the window, and she's like, I look at the window and I look at the bathroom, and then she's like, I started taking my hand and like waving it, you know, in front of the window, and I'm looking at the she's like, I'm looking back at the bathroom and I'm looking at the window. I'm looking at the bathroom. This isn't funny, Jeff, but because it's really not funny. I just can't help but laugh. Like, even if she was telling me the story, she was laughing about it after the fact. So, and she's telling me she's looking back and forth, and she's like waving her hand, you know, in front of the window, trying to, and she could see the reflection of her hand waving back and forth, and she's trying to like see like what is causing this light. So she's waving her hand and she's looking at the window, and she's like, all this happened like within a matter of like boom, boom, boom seconds. she's looking because these lights, what she thought were lights, were like basically on either side of the window. This wasn't like a huge window. It was like maybe a 2-3 feet wide. I don't know. But she said the lights were at either corner of the window. So she said if she's waving her hand and she's looking at the lights, it finally dawns on her that these aren't lights, that they're eyes. So she like, oh crap, like she realized like, oh shit, these are eyes. So, but the whole time she's still like, kind of like, she's still waving her hand like back and forth. So when she stops waving her hand, that's when she realized like it wasn't, I'm sorry. It's not fun. I can't. When she stopped waving her hand, basically, the Dogman kept waving his hand. Like, it wasn't the reflection of her. That's what she realized. It wasn't the reflection of her waving her hand, but it was this thing, like, matching her movements, whatever, like, waving his hand. So when she stopped waving his hand, like, it waved, like, maybe 2 or 3 more waves, and she said, like, it moved his hand away, and she said it smiled. And she said, you know, Preston, like, now that you tell me about a dog man, she was like, the face makes sense, because I just thought it was a monster. She's like, it didn't snarl. It smiled, like, from ear, like the Joker. She like, it smiled like from ear to ear, showed me all of his teeth. But she's like, it was clearly, she like, the only reason I know now that like it was a wolf head, because like there's a security light in the back of the entire, so the whole back of that complex is lit up. So she said that when she, like, all this, she's like, happened in a matter of seconds. So when she stopped waving, she realized, like, when this monster smiled at her, she screamed, and when she backed away from the window, it backed away from the window, and she could see, like, as it backed away, she could see, like, the light behind it, and she could see, like, yeah, this thing had, like she said, wolf or dog ears. So she's like, oh my God, like, you know, so it kind of shook her up. So I didn't ask her anything about it. So, you know, as a follow-up, I talked to her the next day because I wanted to make sure that everything that she told me, you know, it matched up, and, you know, the story didn't change or anything like that. So,
Preston,
you know,
not to cut you off,
I'm sorry,
we got about 9 minutes left of record time, so.
Okay, let me wrap it up by saying this. As a follow-up question, I asked her the next day, like, did she ever see it again? And this would kind of put it in perspective. She's like, Preston, she's like, did I see it again? She's like, I called my husband that night and told me he has to get here. There's a monster here. She's like, I left my apartment that day and went over my mother's crib. She's like, I never went back to that apartment. She's like, my son was born the next week. Like, I was at my mother's house. She goes, you know, I told my husband, I'm not going back there again. So the next day, her husband has to have an uncomfortable conversation with the landlord, telling him that he's going to break the lease. He was honest with him. He told him what happened, right? So surprisingly, the landlord didn't argue with him. He said, he's like, I believe you. He's like, you do? He's like, yeah. He's like, actually, he was like, you're not the only person to say this. He was like, I've been getting complaints from, like, the neighbors, like, on the front side, on the second floor. They've been complaining, saying that something's been looking through their window at night. He's like, but I didn't take them seriously because those windows like 8 feet off the ground. So, you know, when she told me this, she had no knowledge about Dogman. It's not like she sat around and listened to YouTube videos and was well versed on the subject. That's what made it, when I'm listening to it, like, so much shit that she said checked so many check marks. Like, I truly believe that these dogs followed these guys back to that apartment complex because of what they were doing over in the woods. From that aspect of it, from it looking in her window, from it smiling at her, from it just being just curious about humans, from it looking in windows of the apartments. It checked off every check mark. But what I want to let everybody in Cincinnati know, hey, I don't know what the government knows or what they don't know. This isn't about that. This is about getting information out to people that I know that are in the city that I love and I care about very much. I love Cincinnati, and I love the people in Cincinnati, and I know that there are dogmen within the city limits of Cincinnati. And I'm not saying that to scare anybody, but like I said last night, you need to be vigilant. And you don't need to have your guard down just because you live in urban centers. These things are closer than you think, and they're a lot more frequent than you think. That's all I got, Jeff.
Well, I appreciate that. It's very interesting too, because she had no idea that her neighbors above her, or in apartments on the second floor, were seeing this thing either. And like you said, these windows are 8 feet off the ground. This thing was huge. And if you guys didn't listen to last night's upload, go back and listen to it, because Preston describes how Cincinnati's cut out. There's a lot of wilderness around the city, like very small pockets of wilderness for these things to travel. Wow. I mean, I wonder if I'm almost wondering if the guys that were back there kind of, whatever they were doing back there, kind of not summoned them, but kind of brought them in, by making noise or whatever. And they were
okay, Jeff. I'm gonna just cut to the chase. All right, so I'm not gonna be cryptic. I'm gonna just lay it out to okay. And I'm not judging anybody, but what these guys were back there doing is they were illegally hunting deer. Okay, to feed their families, but they were illegally hunting deer. So with that tidbit of information, it probably makes a little bit more sense why they were following me, why they followed back to their apartment.
A blood scent, yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that's definitely the perfect reason why they would follow. I mean, that's truly amazing. Wow. To be honest with you, this last night when me and you were talking, I didn't hear these encounters before Preston just told them, and that's why I'm kind of lost of words right now, because it's amazing. It's truly amazing. These guys are, that's perfect. Like what we were talking about last night. There's two reasons why they hunt, or why the dogmen do what they do: for maliciousness or for hunger. And
right.
This one was clearly for hunger, but curiosity. I mean, because they obviously smelled the blood. There's the bloodlust, hunger. And they come out into a rural area. There's a huge building, lights. They can see people inside. So now they're, they want to investigate a little bit. Really,
right.
Really interesting encounters. And
the thing about it, to put in perspective, like I said, Mount Airy Forest, it's in the Cincinnati city. It's in the city. I mean, it's a huge park,
right?
1,500 acres, but it's in the city. Like it's when I talk about this is inside the city limits of Cincinnati,
like Central Park to New York City, kind of.
Exactly. It's not centrally located. It's kind of like on the eastern, or no, on the western side of Cincinnati. But if you look up Mount Airy Forest, you'll see, and now to put icing on the cake about Mount Airy Forest, not only is Mount Airy Forest one of the biggest public parks in the country, but it sits direct, you go from Mount Airy Forest into Spring Grove Cemetery, which is one of the largest public cemeteries in the country. So there's another check mark with Dogman and Cemetery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Preston, I really appreciate you coming forth and sharing these encounters with us. Like we said last night, he reached out about a year ago. Things went on in both of our lives, my health, his health, and it didn't dawn on me to who Preston was until I looked back at the pictures, and I was like, oh my God, and I was excited because I had wanted to hear the encounter, your first encounter, and I'm truly glad that you got to share it in your own words. I'm glad that it helped a little bit with whatever, bottling it up. It makes me feel good that, it's helping people, I guess. So, that's awesome. And that's why I started the channel. I give you guys a platform to share your encounters, how they happened, and I appreciate it, Preston. Thank you very much.
All right. And you know what? I thank you too, Jeff. Like I said, on a quick note, I'll let you go, but like I said, I'm an amateur investigator, so this has sent me down a rabbit hole, and I've been chasing down a couple leads, and I might be in touch with you about a couple more things.
Absolutely, I hope you do. I really do. You're a really nice guy. I enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope we can stay in contact.
Also, Jeff, we definitely will, brother.
All right. Thanks, and have a great day.
You do the same.
Bye-bye. What a great upload. Excuse me. I really enjoy speaking with Preston. He's a nice guy, very serious into the research and discovery of what is going on in the crypto world. A couple of really good encounters that he shared with us that his friend had gone through, and it makes a lot of sense why these Dogman, whatever, was drawn to that apartment complex. Being in the city, they're obviously the gentleman from Africa could not use a firearm, so they were probably using something that was native to their country, either spear or bow and arrow, to hunt these deer, which then these Dogman smelled the blood, heard the hunt, and was attracted to it because as an apex predator, you're going to want to know what's going on in your area. Also, we were discussing that the way the creek and waterway around his area runs, it's a perfect area for these guys to just travel without being seen. They have like their natural roadway just to travel and avoid detection completely. So I really enjoyed today's upload. I really hope you guys did. I've got some encounters that are sitting on my desk right now that I'm going to narrate tomorrow for you guys. Yeah, wow, what a great upload. Great couple of days. And what a wonderful way to start September, right, guys? Anyway, enough of that. I just want to thank everybody. And let's one last time send our prayers to Elizabeth and her family for the loss of their son, who died in a tragic motorcycle accident. All right, guys. Have a great night. Thanks.